What's good, y'all? It's the Demouchets REACT, and we're back with another video. Who we got today, C?
Today we're back with another American reaction. So excited about this video. If you're new to us
And we're new to you,
make sure you scroll down,
hit that subscribe button,
and turn on the post notification bell.
because we're on the road to 200K.
And we cannot get there without you guys, all right? Join the family. Without further ado, let's get into the video.
Let's get it.
So, in Zimbabwe, they have a saying, Zimbabwe kanyika kadiki, but kanona kidza, which means Zimbabwe is a small country, but very fun. And we're going to have a lot of fun in this episode. And what better way to start off by having fun than by dissecting the flag? We haven't done that in a while, haven't we? The national flag of Zimbabwe consists of 7 horizontal stripes of green, gold, red, and black, with a white triangle containing a red 5-pointed star with a Zimbabwe bird, or
Now, you know, I just noticed we wore all these colors already. We did. The black was first.
Yeah.
Then we wore the red, the yellow, then the green. Whoa, snap.
And this is the last Geography Now episode.
That is
Well,
hard. Okay,
the
observation. Observation. That's what it was.
Yeah.
All right. From the top.
The national flag of Zimbabwe consists of 7 horizontal stripes of green, gold, red, and black, with a white triangle containing a red 5-pointed star with a Zimbabwe bird, or hungwe. The bird is actually a depiction of the soapstone bird statuette that was found at the ruins of Great Zimbabwe. It is likely to be an African fish eagle or battler eagle. No one quite knows exactly. According to the nation's official statement, the white triangle symbolizes peace, the red star represents the nation's aspirations, whereas for the stripes, the green stands for agriculture, the yellow for the wealth and minerals, the black indicates the heritage and race of the black majority of the country, and the red stands for...
Bloodshed. You know. You went crazy.
Now we move on to the coat of arms. The image depicts the same Zimbabwe soapstone bird and red star on the flag at the top, with a gardening hoe and barrel of an AK-47 representing the transition from war to peace. Below is the gold and green wreath symbolizing how mining and agricultural enterprises protects the national economy. And then we get to the green shield with the blue wavy lines and a stone representing the fertility and prosperity of the ground and water. And on each side of the shield is a kudu representing Zimbabwe's ethnic groups united. The kudus are standing on an earth mound with various crops showing the importance of providing for the country. And finally, the motto at the bottom, unity, freedom, and work, are written. Yeah, great flag, right? The soapstone bird, such an iconic symbol of the country. And soon you're going to see that soapstone plays a very interesting role in the country. In fact, the general concept of stones, Zimbabwe meaning the house of stones. But we'll get into that later. First, let's find Zimbabwe on the map, shall we?
Let's talk about that flag. We have watched him dissect so many flags, but that flag was interesting.
That flag, I mean, like I mentioned earlier, for it to look the way it looked and how we've been conducting ourselves when it comes to the color schemes, it's like, it's crazy. The connection is just like really on point. Really on point.
They have some good colors in there.
I think what I like about their flag a lot as well is the bottom, where they have all the
coat
props.
of arms. The coat of arms. Yeah.
All that's really dope. I like that.
Yeah, I like it as well. Every single video that we have received of Zimbabwe has been a long video because there's so much to talk about when it comes to Zimbabwe. So I'm really excited about this. We have had a lot of y'all just waiting on us to finally get to a good Zimbabwe video because y'all like, no, we have so much more to offer.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad that he finally did this video.
Yeah.
So let's get into it.
So, Zimbabwe. Many people just abbreviate this place to Zim, or the people call themselves Zim or Zimbo. It's gone through many names in the past. You've probably heard the word Rhodesia, like the Rhodesian Ridgeback, named after Caesar.
Oh, this is too connective, bro.
For real?
It's really like connecting a lot of dots.
Yeah.
What the what?
Our colors, which are also Pan-African colors.
Let me slide this in. If you guys have been watching this, then y'all know how important it was for me to mention the colors connected to the flag. And for him to mention, if you guys been watching this, y'all knew that we have a dog.
And it's a Rhodesian Ridgeback.
It's a Rhodesian Ridgeback. I think we're going to have a lot of fun in this video today.
Yes.
Train all the way from Cape Town to Cairo. It's a long story. It kind of went like this.
I'm gaining independence. Woo! Oh, okay. I guess I'll just call myself Rhodesia since we don't need to distinguish North and South. Wait, we want independence too. Okay, let's call ourselves Zimbabwe Rhodesia. Wait, why don't we just take out the Rhodesia part and call ourselves Zimbabwe? And we're changing the capital from Fort Salisbury to Harare. Yeah, that's what we'll do.
Oh, and keep in mind, before all this, they were joined with what is now Malawi and Zambia in a federation called Nyasaland and North and South Rhodesia. And before all that, there's so much stuff going on. But first, let's find it on the map, shall we? First of all, Zimbabwe is a landlocked country located in the southern African region. You can remember that it's shaped like a teapot, and it is surrounded by Mozambique, Zambia, Botswana, and South Africa. Now, if you zoom in really close, Zimbabwe also shares a border at the Kazungula Bridge, nearly touching Namibia. I consider this a quadrupoint because it's where all 4 countries meet, but technically cartographers will get super annoying and say, well, actually, it's a double tripoint because the Botswana-Zambia border makes a flat 150-meter wide border separating Zimbabwe from Namibia. To that, I say, shut up, nerds. I literally went there and documented it. You can see all 4 countries. Nobody cares about the legalities. It's a quadrupoint. Anywho, the country is divided into 8 provinces and 2 cities with provincial status. The cities are Bulawayo, the second largest city in the country, and Harare, which is the largest city and also capital of the country. Harare also has the largest and busiest airport of the country, Robert Gabriel Mugabe International, whereas the second busiest airport due to high demand in tourism is actually Victoria Falls Airport in the city of Victoria Falls, way off in the northwestern part of the country. Otherwise, the country has one of the most historically developed long-distance passenger and cargo transport rail lines that connect them to all their other neighboring countries, all operating under the state-owned NRZ, or National Railways of Zimbabwe, which has been operating since 1893, originally under Rhodesian Railways. On top of that, the country has a very extensive road network that links all major cities and towns. However, most roadways bypass the northern corridor due to the area hosting large national parks and the Kariba Reservoir, so the main highways typically pass through the central part. Also keep in mind, the Bait Bridge border post in the south between them and South Africa is the busiest road border entry port in all of Africa. Finally, just keep in mind, you may hear the words Mashonaland and Matabeleland quite a bit here. These are traditional regions of the country where the majority of the Shona peoples live, or Mashonaland, and the Ndebele peoples in the west, it's Matabele. So there you go. In any case, Zimbabwe is sort of kind of like the rebel of the former British colonies in Africa. Apart from the USA, they are the only former British colony to officially just say no and declare their own independence.
Good for them. Yeah.
As opposed to the other colonies that kind of slowly negotiated and figure out a way to independence. Now, granted, it was declared by the white minority-ruled Rhodesian Front government led by Ian Smith, but still, the UK saw this as an act of rebellion.
Yeah, not surprised.
But let's be honest, at this point in the 1960s, half of everything in Africa was gaining independence, so they kind of saw it more like this. Alright, we don't like what you're doing, but controlling you by force is so cost-ineffective and 19th century. So I'm just going to have to implore the UN sanctions against you, and hopefully you'll regret your actions and destroy yourself. Either way, I'll pick up the pieces when you're ready to crawl back to the Commonwealth. And that's when the Bush War started between the Rhodesian government, and it wasn't until the 1980s when everything sort of cooled down and they were actually officially recognized as independent by Mugabe's ZANU party. Fun fact, Mugabe was actually not the first president, but the first prime minister. The title of first president actually belonged to Canaan Banana, who literally tried to make laws to punish people for making fun of his name.
Yo.
Okay.
Which only made people want to make fun of his name even more.
Right.
Later on, Mugabe would assume the title as the second president in 1987, and from there he would pretty much become a dictator that ruled for about 4 decades. Now, it goes without saying there are so many great places in Zimbabwe that you can check out if you decide to come, but one cool little tip, if you do come, you might want to consider getting the Kaza visa. If you get this, you are allowed to go back and forth between Zimbabwe and Zambia as many times within 30 days. So if you're into the whole Victoria Falls thing, you might want to consider it. Otherwise, there are so many cool places to talk about, and here we have one of our geography peeps from Zimbabwe to explain. Take it away.
Hi everybody, I'm Rob. I'm a proud Zimbabwean.
Hi everybody, I'm Natalie. I'm a proud Zimbabwean.
Hey everyone, I'm Sam. I'm a proud Zimbabwean geography.
And I'm here to tell you about some of the top sites you might want to check out.
If you ever decide to come here to Zimbabwe.
First of all, you have to understand that Zimbabwe has a lot of history.
We have had many ancient kingdoms and dynasties that ruled over our lands.
You can see some of the ruins of these kingdoms all over.
If you want prehistoric sites, maybe the Dalamombe Rocks paintings are for you. You can see cave paintings all over here.
In fact, Zimbabwe has the largest concentration of rock art in Africa.
The most popular and important ancient site in the country, though, is of course the UNESCO-inscribed Great Zimbabwe ruins of the Shona peoples.
Here, you can see the 11th to the 15th century medieval stone walls and enclosures of the former kingdom that play an iconic role in Zimbabwe's identity.
Further west, you can find the second largest stone complex, the Kami ruins of the Batua Kingdom near the city of Bulawayo.
This place was a major center of trade for a long time and even extended trade connections as far as China.
Speaking of Bulawayo, it's a very cool city. They have the Bulawayo Clubhouse, which is a preserved colonial Rhodesian-style social clubhouse that is being converted into a museum.
Of course, other cities have their charm, like the capital Harare, or Chitungwiza, Kwekwe, with their nightlife and markets.
If you come to Zimbabwe, though, the most famous and important thing you must enjoy is our natural side.
You've probably seen the $100 trillion banknote, right? Well, the picture on the back of it actually is a real place, the Balancing Rocks. This is a real site in Zimbabwe and one of the most beautiful at Motobo National Park.
Here you can find these strange rocks and boulders that are eroded and balancing on top of each other. Many of them have names too, like the Mother and Child Rock or the Flying Boat Rock.
We also have the Chinoi Caves that are not only super beautiful, but you can also do some cave diving here in the beautiful blue waters.
And finally, we cannot talk about Zimbabwe without the most iconic natural landmark, Victoria Falls, or Mosi Itunya, the smoke that thunders.
Victoria Falls is the largest sheet of falling water in the world, measured by its combined width and height. Almost every time you come here, you'll see a rainbow on the waterfalls.
And we share the waterfall with our neighbor, Zambia. If you want the best view of the waterfall, you have to come to the Zimbabwe side.
Even hearing the sounds of the water is amazing.
Where you can see the majestic Zambezi River in all its glory. Anyway, that is just some of the top sites you might want to consider.
And if you do, I hope you enjoy. Thanks.
Thank you, and my Tabasa.
I hope you enjoy. Thanks.
One thing Zimbabweans always tell us is about the smoke that thunders.
Oh yeah, 100%.
It seems like such a calm place. Like I would just want to sit there and write.
Yeah. Now I know Zimbabwe has so much more to offer, but y'all natural works from the animals to the history to the rocks formation, right? To the art. Well, I'm gonna call it art on the wall, but I understand it's from the historic moments as well, and everything else that goes with just the natural works. It's just very vibrant. Very vibrant alone. Yeah.
Thank you. Oh man, those Shona ruins, the House of Stones, that's literally what Zimbabwe means, the House of Stones. I told you, stones play a big role here. And speaking of stones, let's talk about the natural side of Zimbabwe in the next segment. So I'm just going to speak freely right now. This isn't even part of the script. I'm just going to speak from my own experience. When you come to Zimbabwe, you pretty much get to see everything that you stereotypically affiliate with Africa. You see the savannas, you see the umbrella trees, you see every single imaginable animal possible. You see animals like elephants and baboons just walking around in the populated human areas. But on top of that, there's also a resource side to Zimbabwe that really plays an important role in who they are. And every tribe and ethnic group has their own distinct way of utilizing the natural side of Zimbabwe. But first, let's go to the motion graphic and explain the physical makeup of Zimbabwe. First of all, much of Zimbabwe lies on a plateau that is part of the Zambezi River Basin, sandwiched between two major rivers of Africa, the Zambezi in the north and the Limpopo in the south. Now, you cannot talk about Zimbabwe without mentioning the Zambezi River. First of all, it is the longest shared river in Zimbabwe, making up most of the northern border with Zambia, although side note, the longest non-shared river completely within Zimbabwe is the Save River in the south. This river is also the site of the world-famous Victoria Falls, also shared with Zambia, and by taking the length and height proportions, it is considered the world's largest waterfall and the largest sheet of falling water in the world. Keep in mind, although the waterfalls are shared with Zambia, the best view of the waterfalls is on the Zimbabwe side. However, most of the actual falls is on the Zambia side, where you can jump into the Devil's Pool and make it look like you're about to fall off, but you're totally safe. Within the Zambezi River, they have the Kariba Reservoir, the largest man-made reservoir in the world, created after the completion of the Kariba Dam, which powers both them and Zambia. Just another side note though, Zimbabwe doesn't really have many large natural inland bodies of water other than man-made reservoirs, the two largest ones being Manyame by Harare and Lake Mutirikwi in Masvingo, both of which were created through dam projects. Otherwise, much of the country depends on underwater aquifer systems, which many communities depend on to dig up wells for fresh water sources. Otherwise, apart from all that, much of the rest of the country is flat, semi-arid savanna with occasional rolling hills, until you get to the east, and then you find the Zambezi Escarpment, the Umukwe Range, and the Zimbabwe Range in the far east by the border with Mozambique. Here you can find the highest peak of the country, Mount Nyangani, at just under 2,600 meters in height. Oh man, our last physical geography motion graphic. Well, as you can see, there's a lot of stuff going on with Zimbabwe. You got the reservoir, you got the rivers, you got the rocks, you got the mountains, you got the resources, and all of this plays into the way how they carry themselves economically. And who better to cover this segment than you know who, Mr. Noah.
My fellow geography peeps, it's crazy how time flies. Here we are at long last. Zimbabwe. Actually, hold on. That's more like it. Barb's, would you mind holding this hammer for me?
Jeez, I don't know.
Oh, look at that. I guess, you're worthy. Well, let's go. So, what you do need to know is that on the surface, Zimbabwe has a lot of resource potential. For one, they're a mineral powerhouse with over 60 tradable minerals, mostly in the PGM category or platinum group metals. This includes things like chrome, gold, lithium, and diamonds. Today, they have the second largest platinum deposit in high-grade chromium ores in the world. If you're looking for gems, though, everywhere you look, you will see green malachite in Sandawana or Zeus gems in the stores and street markets. Now, granted, this isn't to say that Zimbabwe hasn't had their complications in the past. Yes, in 2018, at one point during the economic crisis, the finance minister Tendai Biti announced to the parliament that Zimbabwe had the lowest bank balance ever recorded in history, with only $217 left after paying public workers. That's incredible. Today, challenges are still evident, such as the recent drought brought on by El Nino weather patterns. However, as we will explain later in the episode, fiscal changes were implemented. And in any case, Zimbabwe is at least showing that they are open to taking on new ideas to move forward. They've always had a sort of building spirit. Historically, they were the second country in Africa to have their own TV station in 1961, ZTV. The one thing they've always proudly featured on their TV channel has been showcasing the beautiful scenery and wildlife of the nation. And with that, we move on to, what's his name again?
What's up, everyone? I'm so excited to do the animal segment for the final episode, Zimbabwe. What is this? No.
His hat.
They going off.
Yeah.
Last time.
It's
His accent.
For one last episode. Alas, we've reached our final destination. Right now, I'll show you the Zimbabwe to the animals. First off, Zimbabwe is not only home to a wide range of species today, but even in ancient animals too. The oldest African dinosaur was found in Zimbabwe, the Imberosaurus. Only a few countries in Africa offer a wildlife experience true to the African continent more than Zimbabwe. They understand that animals are just as valuable to them as their mineral resources, as the safari industry brings in nearly $500 million annually in revenue. They have 11 national parks, and after Botswana, they have the largest population of African elephants in the world at somewhere around 100,000, many of which are in the largest national park, Hwange. Here's Barb's mom witnessing an elephant thinking this was a picture and not a video. Now we've talked about South African wildlife, so of course you know the big five.
It's not
Zimbabwe
the rhino.
has
It's the
4
rhino.
out of the big 5 species. The only rhinos in the country are currently in captivity for protection and breeding programs to help repopulate the species before release back into the wild. But in that regard, Zimbabwe likes to boast populations of the small 5, the shy 5, and the ugly 5. That's my high school girlfriend.
No, that laugh was a little hard.
Rhino beetle, elephant shrew, buffalo weaver, leopard tortoise, and ant lion. The shy 5 is the meerkat, porcupine, aardvark, bat-eared fox, and the aardwolf. And finally, the ugly 5, the warthog, the vulture, the wildebeest, the hyena, and posmum. Well, actually, the 5th ugly one is the marabou stork that has a very funny looking thing called a goulash sack under its beak, used for storing fish when hunting. It's like having a small food storage container built into your body in case you want to eat later. In 1975, Zimbabwe passed the Parks and Wildlife Act, in which hunting or capturing has been prohibited, except under special permits issued by the government. Most of these permits are used for things like captive breeding efforts, scientific research, population control, or defense of property or farmland if wildlife is affecting it. Yes, people, sometimes if there are too many of a species, it can negatively affect the ecosystem. So sometimes Zimbabwe's government is like, go for it! hunt those
That's
millions
crazy.
of pesky impala eating all the plants. So if a wildebeest is grazing on your crops, you have every right to avenge Mufasa. Shoot those wildebeest right in their face. You've got legal precedent for Mufasa. Back to the American accent.
Okay, hold up, wait a minute. So they don't have the rhino. We saw a rhino recently, y'all.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
It was kind of a little scary and an embarrassing sight.
Man.
It didn't care that we was right there, baby. It started
marking its territory.
marking its territory. It did not care.
At all.
was
It
right
looked
there.
like it wanted to charge.
Mm-hmm.
It had its horns. It had everything. It was really nice, too.
Mm-hmm. So that won't even matter to us, because when y'all lose the rhino, all those other little creatures, our children will love it.
Right. I don't know about the
They
last
love
one.
it.
It was, the Shy Five
Yeah, and the ugly five.
and the Ugly Five. Well, we see vultures. We got them.
Oh, yeah.
They're not that type of vulture. Their vulture's a little bigger,
Yeah.
but
Our children are just obsessed over any type of animal, quirky things on it.
yeah.
They
yeah.
love it.
Nah, it's
Put it in
fine.
a little book that they keep.
Facts.
With that, it's been a crazy ride. I am so thankful that over these many years we've been able to teach you guys about geography and teach you about the animals of the world. It's been so much fun learning and growing with you. The Gary Harlow accent was crazy. I think I did that for the first time in the Qatar episode, and that was so much fun to do. I know some of you hated it. I read the comments. I know some of you hated the accent, and I know it's not good.
But a lot of people liked it.
But a lot of people liked it, and it's fun. It's a tribute to the one and only Steve Irwin, who is the king and will forever be the king of animals. So,
Oh, just one more for old time's sake.
it's Gary Harlow signing out. Cheers.
Yeah.
Thank you, Caleb/Gary Harlow. With that, we move on to the final segment, the food of Zimbabwe.
Oh, they were waiting for you to say that, Noah. It's the way how you say food, man.
Now, Zimbabwean food does follow a sort of general Southern and East African format, with dishes that are shared amongst other nations in the area. The most popular staples usually served with most dishes being either nshima or sadza, usually made of maize, but can also be made with sorghum, millet, and cassava. We asked you guys, the Zimbabwean geography peeps, what the most popular meal in Zimbabwe was, and many of you said it would probably be sadza with hyperidzi and gango, or beef short ribs and leafy green stew. Other side dishes include stewed okra, peanut butter rice, and matemba, which are dried lake sardines. In markets, especially in the more rural areas, you might find more native fruits being sold, such as the mutamba, or monkey orange, watowo, or African bubblegum fruit, and geni, or sour plums. Zimbabweans are quite entomophagous. And in the delis of grocery stores, don't be surprised if you often find mopane worms. They are high in protein, and they are a very popular snack amongst people. And here's a clip of Barb sharing with his subscribers in Zimbabwe.
Who else wants to try mopane worms? We got... Yes, these are mopane worms. You cannot escape destiny. There you go. Tal, let us know what you think. Come on, you can do this. Everybody else did it. You want more? Dude, now Julian wants more.
Of course, you cannot come to Zimbabwe without a proper barbecue or gochi. And if the restaurant or person has obtained a government-approved permit to hunt a non-endangered species for the sake of population control, you would be in for a treat to have some of the African game meat. Most of them coming from ungulates like springbok, impala, antelope, kudu, buffalo, wildebeest, and so on. Finally, for drinks, everywhere you go, you'll see mahiwu. It's a traditional drink made of maize, milk, and sugar. Every bar in Zimbabwe has Zambezi beer and Masuper Jibuku. And finally, Mazwe Orange Crush. Every Zimbabwean grew up with this stuff. They love it so much that one time the company announced that they would change the recipe due to some regulations on some of the more possibly harmful processed ingredients. When they heard this, the people rebelled and threatened to boycott them if they did. So to this day, they stuck with the original recipe, processed ingredients, and all. There was even a saying some people came up with: if we die with them.
Leave it alone. I love that. I love that because y'all ride for what y'all love, and that was a pure example of how y'all rock. I love that. I love that.
They say, well, okay, what y'all think
We
about
like
taking
it.
off?
We love it. Leave it alone.
It's been fun. It's been a truly amazing time being on the show for all these years. Thank you for being with us for this adventure, and what an adventure it has been. I hope after all this time you finally have been able to know a few things. Whether you've been here from the start or somewhere along the way, or even just now watching for the first time, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. This isn't the end though. We'll meet again. But for now, I'll see you later.
I was worthy.
Until next time, stay tuned and stay ready.
Thank you, Noah, and Gary Harlow, who is definitely not Caleb. Well, guys, as you know, there's so much going on in Zimbabwe with the natural landscape and the borders and the demarcations and the lines. What are we missing? Probably the most important part of Zimbabwe, the Zimbabwean people. Let's talk about them.
A Zimbabwean is someone who can speak many languages, who can say hello, sabona, magadi in my language, mabuyani, that's a Kalanga language. Growing up in Zimbabwe, I want to say I could not trade it for anything else.
I would say resilient. As a Zimbabwean, I've seen how we faced our fair share of political and economic challenges. But throughout it all, we've always managed to keep our heads and keep our warmth and kindness. No matter what's going on, we're always the kind of people who welcome each other with open arms and a smile.
Zimbabwe, we are a cultural people. We do traditional ceremonies. We are still doing that to identify ourselves as a people. But as God-fearing people, God will fix our things for us.
Friendly, approachable, welcoming people with so much culture. I think also as well, we are like hustlers. We work hard, we strive to do what we can do, and we hustle and we grind.
When I say Zimbabwean, there's pride in it. So the diversity amongst people that is there, it makes me proud to say I am Zimbabwean.
Being a Zimbabwean means being from the single best country in the world.
What unites all Zimbabweans, I think it's the way we were brought up. Even though we might be Shona or Ndebele or Tonga or Nambia, we are still one Zimbabwean and one nation. And through that family bond and the Christianity bond, that helps us a lot to, be united.
What is a Zimbabwean? From what I've been told, there's a word, kupatana, which means coming together, and it's a sort of virtue that most Zimbabweans can adhere to. Now, as we'll soon explain, yes, there are two main ethnic groups, but still Zimbabwe is quite a diverse nation with lots of different ethno-linguistic groups that come together. And throughout their history, many people groups have come in and fought and taken over or settled different areas. Post-colonial times, things got even more complicated. But today, regardless of everything that has happened, all the peoples here come together just as Zimbabweans. Now let's describe it in the demographics graph, shall we? First of all, the country has about 16.5 million people today and is about 99% African in origin. Now, I've heard conflicting numbers on the percentages in my research and asking locals, but from what I've gathered, it seems like the largest ethnic group that dominates the country is the Shona at somewhere over 70% of the country, whereas the second largest group, the Ndebele, make up about, say, 18% or so. From there, about 10% of the country is the remaining African groups and tribes and clans and ethno-linguistic groups, and the remaining 2% of the country is made up of non-African citizens, mostly of British white descent, and a few Asians as well, mostly of Indian descent. Now, this is the part where I usually talk about the currency and the plug outlet and the driving side. Well, first of all, they drive on the left side of the road, former British colony, no surprise. But for the other two, it's a little complicated. See, in 2009, after the financial crisis, at one point, there were 8 official currencies that were used, the ones listed right here. And today, they are trying to revive the new gold-backed ZiG, or New Zimbabwean currency. And at stores, they will quote the official price in the ZiG. They are trying to push the new currency, but it's a little complicated. However, today you can still use dollars, euros, South African rand, and Botswanan pula. And unofficially, the dollar is the most popular one. As for plug outlets, a lot of places use the Type G British-style plug outlet. However, I've seen a lot of places that use the universal plug outlet. Whew, it's getting a little hot, but I still got to keep filming.
Listen, that's one thing we have not heard of.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we forget it, hopefully we don't.
Yeah.
It'll be there.
The USB will be my best friend.
Exactly.
Because, it's mad familiar, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and it's easy to not have to carry around the box that goes with it.
Like how jumbo is that big outlet? Because I know for the washer, it has those 3 rings, and it's really, really thick, you know what I'm saying? So,
yeah.
So now, with all that money talk, you're probably wondering, okay, how did all that happen? Why was there 8 currencies that were official at one time? Long story short, in 2008, Zimbabwe hit the highest inflation rate out of any country in the world after Hungary. Now, when people think of Zimbabwe, the image that sometimes gets conjured up in their head would be the $100 trillion banknote, the highest denomination of any banknote in the entire world. This meant that their previous currency, the Zimbabwean dollar, was devalued 3 times, and then it was completely dropped in 2009. People needed bricks of bills just to buy a piece of candy. This meant that Zimbabweans were sort of kind of forced into a position where they had to kind of figure out things financially. In fact, they even have a word for it, kungwavangwava, which is, it kind of describes the hustle culture of Zimbabweans. Oh, I forgot to talk about the languages. Today, Zimbabwe actually has surpassed South Africa by having 16 official languages, and then English as a lingua franca for those that don't speak either of those languages, but generally 16 altogether. And this is where we get to the controversial Land Reform Act. This is something Zimbabweans are a little kind of iffy about talking. They're kind of uncomfortable with it, but they have to kind of address it at some point. You may have heard some stuff about this in the news. Basically, it was the incident where they tried to give land back to the native Zimbabweans from the minority white colonists. On paper, it sounded good, but the way how it was implemented kind of went down a little, let's just say, headlines were made.
That's why I like, hold up. That's why I like phone calls, y'all. I could text all day. Because people could text something, but what they mean on paper ain't the real motive. It sound good on paper, but how they are, dissecting it, you would never think, oh, that's what you meant. Yeah, just call me.
Yes, we need the tone.
I need the tone.
You explain every single context clues, okay? Be clear and direct.
I need to hear if you're going to stutter over a certain part. I need to pick up everything. The signals got to make sense because paper's paper. You can read it in any type of way.
Right.
You want it to sound good, but for them, they're like, nah.
Don't be trying to trick me.
I ain't mean it like that, though. Change it up on you.
Of 1979, shortly after independence, it was supposed to be a willing seller, willing buyer agreement. But the problem was lands weren't selling up fast enough, and then the government got kind of impatient, and so they kind of just forcibly started taking land, and that's when things happened. And this is the part of the story that gets really complicated because it really depends on who you ask in Zimbabwe, whether it be the native Zimbabweans, the white Zimbabweans, the government official Zimbabweans, the countryside Zimbabweans. It was such a complicated thing that happened. Long story short, white Zimbabweans started to flee the country as they felt like they could not stay anymore. Whereas Zimbabweans in Zimbabwe originally thought that this was a good thing, they were getting land back, but then it turned out that the government kind of just allocated the land to government officials and their families, showing a high sense of nepotism, which when they saw that happening, it kind of made them feel a different way on how they originally thought they would feel. This led to ZDERA, or the Zimbabwe Democratic and Economic Recovery Act in 2001, followed by sanctions, mostly from the Western world in 2008 and 2009, which basically affected their economy and made things so much more complicated. This also meant that they could not get funds from the IMF anymore, and despite having large reserves of things like diamonds and other resources, the demand went down, supply went up. You can kind of figure out what happened from there. In any case, since then, Zimbabweans have been resilient despite all the complications that have happened in the past 10 or 20 or so years. They know how to get by, and above all that, they know how to still have fun regardless. And nothing is more fun than the sports. And with that, let's take it to Art with the sports part.
Hey guys, it's me, Art. I'm back.
Hey, wait, Art, what have you been up to, by the way?
Not much.
Mr. Earth is Mr. New Mexico.
Yo. Yeah.
Congratulations, Mr. New Mexico.
That's good. That's good. Okay.
Oh, yeah, that thing happened. Yeah. Yeah.
No big deal. Oh, hey, Mikhail, what's up? Oh, someone grew up. Remember when you were a baby? You're on the show. It's crazy how time flies, doesn't it? Okay, let's do this one for the last time. Bittersweet, but here we go. So if you want to understand the way that Zimbabwe plays, you have to look back at their past as a British colony. This means, of course, that British-inspired sports like cricket, rugby, and of course football are all popular here. In fact, cricket is one of the only sports they've qualified for the World Cup. Their national team is called the Chevrons. Everyone knows these famous players right here. By the way, if you meet a guy named Tatenda, there's likely a 90% chance that he's from Zimbabwe because they play a lot of Nintendo there.
Nintendo.
Nintendo, the female Nintendo.
They try.
Their national rugby union team is the Sables, and they've made appearance at 2 Rugby World Cups. For football, many Zimbabweans will remind you of the fact that their national men's team, the Warriors, has competed in the African Cup 5 times and won the Kosovo Cup 6 times. And when these two teams play, they are going crazy. Another side note, Zimbabweans will also let you know that they were the first Southern African country to host the All-Africa Games in 1995, something that they are very proud of. And to this day, Zimbabwe has 8 Olympic medals, but here's the kicker. 7 of those 8 Olympic medals were all won by Christy Coventry in the women's swimming, making her the most decorated athlete of all of Africa. After having won the medals for her country, Robert Mugabe called her a daughter of Zimbabwe, and the Golden Girl, awarding her not only money, but also appointed her the Minister of Youth, Sports, Arts, and Recreation in this cabinet. We also can't forget Elliot Mujaji, a track and field athlete whose arm was amputated after an electrical incident. After recovering, he went on to become Zimbabwe's first Paralympic gold medalist. So there you go, guys. That is the sports part for Zimbabwe. I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who's been tuning in to Geography Now. This has become a big part of my life. Paul's one of my best friends, as well as the other co-hosts. We're all very close. It's been it's been a fun ride. We'll still be making other stuff, but this is the end of this chapter, so on to the next. One last time, can I do the Wolverine claws?
Okay, fine.
Okay, here we go.
That's crazy.
Thank you, Art. Yes, Zimbabweans still have a recreational, fun, competitive side to them, but they also have a lot of ethno-linguistic and diverse parts to them as well. And it's really cool to kind of highlight each and every single one of them. But, you know, I'm not the one who's going to do that. Our favorite token female, Random Hannah, is going to take it away. Take it away to Culture Stuff, Hannah, for one last time.
Before we get into Random Hannah,
let's get it.
Why nobody told us to check out Zimbabwe's team? We didn't watch plenty of rugby matches with y'all. No, nobody told us nothing. We want to see.
Yeah. Yeah, so y'all know what to do. Put that in the comment section. We need a new one, new game. You
The description box.
Check it out. Link. We got to check it out.
Hey everyone, for one last random time, I'm Random Hannah here to bring you the culture segment. I can't believe that this is the last episode. I read that line on the teleprompter and I got emotional because we've been doing this for so many years.
How many years? Was 7 years or something?
It's about 7 years. I've been married for 6.5 years and I started this right before I got married.
Or before you married Ian.
Before I married Ian, I started filming.
All I needed was a girl who could read the teleprompter, and you fit the bill. So
that was literally, I showed up, I had no idea what I was doing, and then here we are 7 years later. Anyways, so as mentioned, Zimbabwe has lots of different ethnic groups, most of whom came from the Great Bantu Migration. But for now, we'll just give you a brief overview of the two largest ones that make up about 90% of the country, the Shona and Ndebele. The Shona people are such an influential group that nearly everyone learns their language, and it has become an almost ubiquitous part of their national identity. Shona peoples were known for having started the Zimbabwe Kingdom, where the country gets its name from, which was built upon the castles and medieval city of Great Zimbabwe. Later, other kingdoms and dynasties would follow, like the Torwa and Mutapa, until the last empire, the Rosevi, ruled until the 19th century. And if there's one thing that Shona people are known for specifically, it's their value of stone sculpture, specifically in soapstones and later serpentine. These stones are unique in that they start with a gray color, but when finally polished, they turn black. So many sculptures feature polished and unpolished sections to highlight the beautiful duality of the stone's natural features. The national emblem of Zimbabwe is even derived from the soapstone bird found in Great Zimbabwe. The Ndebele people, on the other hand, are split into north and south groups, and they are essentially the cousins of the Zulus in South Africa that split off and migrated north up to what is now mainly the western part of Zimbabwe and North South Africa. They share a lot of similar cultural traits as the Zulus and have a pretty mutually intelligible language with them. Ndebele crafts are heavy on colorful beadwork that is used in thick rings that they use to cover practically every part of their bodies during ceremonies. The limbs, the neck, the head, and even ankle. And if you go to the countryside outside of cities, you might come across the Indalus. They're traditional thatched mud houses that some people still live in. Traditionally, they have a custom of painting the sides of these houses with elaborate colorful patterns that the women are in charge of creating. Many Ndebele villages may have a building dedicated to Sangoma, who is a traditional healer that uses various herbs and traditional rituals for people that have ailments. Otherwise, the remainder of the country is filled with so many other unique peoples and customs. There's even the Vadoma, known as the ostrich people. These people have a large portion of their population that lives with the ectrodactyl condition that gives them cleft digits on their hands and feet. Otherwise, a few cultural traits all Zimbabweans, more or less, are familiar with would be the concept of Matupo, sometimes translated to totem. This is not like the totem poles we have in the Americas, but rather is a concept that is used to identify native tribes and clans signified by native animals. So for example, when Zimbabweans meet, they may ask what their matupo is, and a response might be something like, I'm from the warthog matupo or the giraffe matupo, and they will know exactly where that person comes from and what their lineage and backstory is.
Wow.
Yeah, what do you think your
That's big.
I don't know, I like red pandas, they're very vicious. They're vicious, and they're the cutest thing that has ever existed. So, red panda, final answer.
You're a red panda.
This was done as a way to organize the clans and to avoid close kinship marriages. People of the same matupo are not allowed to marry, and it also serves as a way to protect the environment, as it usually considered taboo to eat or kill the animal that represents your matupo.
I like that. That's different.
It is.
That's our first time hearing that about the totem pole. So we have something similar in our culture where we'll ask, what's your last name? Because y'all know the history of our last names, majority of them do come from, our slave history. So we'll ask your last name, who your people, so that we can avoid having people marry who are close cousins.
Right.
Yeah.
Another way we do that is like gatherings, family reunions, and stuff like that. Everybody's off limits that pulled up to the family reunion. Don't flirt.
Yes.
Don't try to think of nothing. Y'all all there to meet, grow, and learn each other because it's literally family.
Yes.
Literally family. It's how like the little village grows whenever the family reunions get together. You know?
It's crazy how we're on opposite sides of the world, but similar things.
Yeah.
You know?
Facts.
The Bantu people.
Notice that the month of November is considered sacred in Zimbabwe. It is believed this is the month when ancestral spirits rest. So all weddings, ceremonies, events, memorial events, or even hunting is typically not performed, as the spirits are usually summoned for those events. And finally, in Zimbabwe, you will see a lot of bomas, which are a general meeting area with a fire in the center, usually used for eating, meetings, and performances. Performances that typically have lots of music. And with that, one last time, thankfully you only have to hear Keith one last time.
She always got on Keith.
Keith for the music segment. But before we do, I just want to say it has been such an honor and a privilege to be a part of Geography Now and to talk about the culture of different countries. I have learned so much, and I've met so many amazing people from different cultures around the world. So I have to thank Paul, Barbs.
So glad you've been a part of the channel for all this time.
And
You've seen her grow up.
I know. I got married and had a kid.
On the show. You've been pregnant on the show.
I've been pregnant on the show.
Crazy.
Paul still owes me and Ian a trip to St. Lucia because he gave me the trip, and then literally like the next week COVID hit, and then we had a baby, and so
I still owe you a trip to St. Lucia. So you haven't seen the last of Hannah.
you haven't seen the last of
I
us.
guarantee it. Thank you, Hannah, for everything.
Thank you, Paul. Love ya.
Now on to Keith.
Keith.
We got Keith back.
Hi,
Keith back.
How's my hair look? It just looks like though.
Yeah!
Alright, there we go.
Guys, it's the last episode, and guess who's back? It's me, Keith, the one, the only, the Keith Eternal, Keith Forever, the greatest Keith that has ever existed. You can even get this shirt at geographynow.com. Get that shirt. Anyways, let's get to the Zimbabwe episode, guys. Okay, so let's talk music. Did I just get a text mid-thing and ruin this take? Not talking to you, first of all, if you ask people in Zimbabwe, what instrument do you think is the most iconic to Zimbabwe? Most of them will probably go with the imbira, sometimes called the thumb piano. Basically an instrument where you pluck the metal keys with your thumbs and it makes this like cool metallic sound.
Yeah.
I think they're pretty sick, honestly. Like, if you happen to live in Zimbabwe and you want to send me one, please send me one. Woo! It is said that this instrument was invented here, and almost every event or ceremony in Zimbabwe includes this instrument somehow, some way or another. You will also hear and see other instruments used at events, like large drums called ngoma, gourd rattles called hosho, and the large wooden marimba. These four instruments are like the base of every traditional performance. I played the marimba in high school in the pit of the marching band. That was pretty cool. Am I a world-class marimba player? Absolutely not. In addition, of course, the music is almost always accompanied by singing and dancing. Each group has their own style and melody, but one common thing they all share is a very complex vocal harmonic system that uses a lot of improvisation. Oftentimes, the singers will go back and forth between audience members and other singers on stage and sing typically maybe a 4-bar phrase. Participation is encouraged and even expected at some of these performances. If you're feeling it, join in. That's the rule. I mean, hey, you know, who doesn't go to a rock concert and then when the singer goes, "All right, audience, sing this part. Whoa! Baby, See, there you go. Paul's singing the words. Otherwise, in a more contemporary sense, Zimbabwe's music has evolved in the past century, taking influences. For example, Sungura, which means rabbit, is one of, if not the most popular genre that emerged in the 1950s. Later, it was pioneered in the 80s, again, by Ephraim Joe and his band. It's best described as a style that infuses traditional instruments with rock, rumba, and pop, combining Western and African influences. And the songs tend to be super long, like a minimum of 10 minutes. So if you're into a long show, get comfy. Progressive rock bands also have long shows. So just enjoy the show. We live in a world where everything is such instant gratification, or otherwise known as TikTok brain, as the boomers call it. Anyways, another genre that came out of Zimbabwe is Mbube. Yeah, who doesn't like boobies? You know what I'm saying? It was created by mine workers that would sing in the caves to pass time and would use the echoes of the caves to create a delay effect that would sound really dope, and then they would sing with the delay. But we can't forget Zim dancehall. It's a super popular genre as well, heavily influenced by Jamaican dancehall music. In fact, speaking of Jamaica, Bob Marley performed...
Now the good thing about our channel is that...
Bob Marley always slip in the conversation, bro.
Everywhere, huh? The good thing about the channel is that we have people tuning in from all over the world.
Big facts.
Right? And he loves to be on this journey with us, following us for their countries and other countries as well. So our Jamaicans, y'all knew that?
Yeah.
And let us know, do y'all jam it?
Gotta tap in now.
Who y'all
I
favorite
believe
artists?
they do. Yeah, put that favorite artist in the comment section. I want to also hear the music, though, with the echo of how they made it out to, you know what I'm saying? They took it from the cave and they took it to the studio. And I think that's how a lot of relationships are built. If you think about it, they use the anthill to implement it into building the mall so the air circulation can go through. That's crazy, bro. It's like the way they use nature as a stepping stool to make something work for the people.
Yeah, they are really in tune with nature.
Yeah, that's fire.
At the country's independence and wrote a song called Zimbabwe. And he did it for free. Wow! Other genres have come out of Zimbabwe.
We heard that story.
I think it was about him in
I think it was
Ethiopia.
Was it? Oh, it was Ethiopia. And he went out. Okay, but he did it for free out there too, if I'm not mistaken. Look at him.
Myrie, Tuko, and Zimpop. Here are some top artists from Zimbabwe you should totally look up if you have time. Show list of people.
Nah, he ain't saying that.
And one of our subscribers told us everyone low-key loves Winky D. If you criticize him, you will get destroyed in Zimbabwe, or you'll get trampled to death by elephants. And you guys wanted us to say that Alec Machizo invented the dance called Barodale. Every Zimbabwean knows this dance, and it's important to tell the world. Crazy how much Zimbabwe has created over all these years, isn't it? In any case, that's it for me. You know, I would like to say thanks to Paul for having me on the show from 2016 to now 2024, 8 years of geography now for me, 10 years in total. It's been a long journey. We've seen some stuff. We did some stuff. I would like to give some shout outs to some people, subscribers that I met from the show. Hey, what's up, Andre and Dragna? You guys were great. All my Balkan homies, my friends up in the Northern European countries, the Middle East. You guys know who you are. Thank you to each and single one of you people on planet Earth that has watched me be a complete idiot on camera, and I hope I put a smile on your face and made you laugh. Maybe at some point I'll have my own country called Ethiopia. It's not the end of me, but it's the end. Oh, dude, it's never the end of me because I am Keith. I am immortal. I transcend time. I am the greatest. With the internet, I technically do transcend time until they shut down all the servers and a nuclear holocaust happens and we all die. Anyways, I love all of you guys. Thank you so much. Woo! Don't do drugs. Stay in school. Woo!
That's some good words.
I hope to see you on the next one.
Thank you, Keith. So good to have you back. And with that, let's move on to our last and final segment. You know what it is, the friend zone.
They landlocked. So you got to give it to any one of those countries that's landlocked connected to them.
They're best friends.
They're best friends. Yep, and I think whoever their allies are, that they really work with a lot, that's their best friend. I can't call it, but I did call out the allies part, so it's the connection.
Okay, so do you think that they still have a export-import relationship with the UK?
Oh, that's a sticky question.
I don't know, because it sounds like how he explained it about, they said, we're just going to wait for y'all to self-destruct, and they said, baby, watch this. We got this.
We'll show you better.
Okay.
That'd be interesting.
I don't know.
That'd be interesting.
I really don't know if they have, I don't know.
I wouldn't go back. I wouldn't go back. You know what I'm saying?
I'm about to chant something, but no.
Okay, that's good.
So in terms of diplomacy, Zimbabwe has had a lot of ties over the years, not just with their southern African neighbors, but abroad as well. For one, after declaring independence and signing the Lancaster Agreement, they started out focusing more on the NAM, or non-aligned movement states, as this time was in the heat of the Cold War. During the Rhodesian Bush War times, China supported Robert Mugabe's ZANU party, while Russia supported Joshua Nkomo's ZAPU party. Eventually, the ZANU came into control, and since then, China has become the largest foreign investor for Zimbabwe. Their heads of state have visited each other, and they have done multiple trade deals in everything from agriculture to military equipment. For Europe, Mugabe had always been sort of critical of France from a distance after making statements about their involvement in African affairs, such as the Djibouti Civil War. But in 2003, he and his wife were invited by then-President Jacques Chirac on a sort of controversial attempt at diplomacy, and although Mugabe expressed appreciation, this made other European nations upset at the time due to France sort of offering legitimacy to a figure they deemed controversial. Otherwise, South Africa, the UK, and Australia hold the largest communities of Zimbabweans in diaspora to this day, most migrated during conflict times. Interestingly enough, Mugabe described himself as an Anglophile. He was frequently seen wearing Savile Row suits and being a huge fan and promoting the game of cricket to his country and befriending former Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher. He even went so far as siding with them on the Falkland Island Wars and shunning talks with the Soviet Union in favor of accepting British military advisors and allowing British military bases to be set up. During the late 90s and early 2000s, however, things soured a bit after human rights records were brought up and accused, and Mugabe then accused the British of sabotage. However, after the 2017 coup d'etat that forcibly removed Mugabe, relations got much better and dignitaries started to make diplomatic visits again. Otherwise, if we're going to talk about their best friends, it really depends on who you ask. For example, Zimbabwe and Mozambique share the same Shona ethnic group, and much of their trade sector depends on the train line that goes to the port of Beira. On that note, South Africa and Botswana also share a lot of the same tribes and ethnic groups. South Africa has usually tried to play a more mediator role for Zimbabwe during conflict times. Botswana has had their brief moments of cross-criticism during the Mugabe years, like when they had to deal with a large influx of Zimbabwean refugees and publicly expressing illegitimacy to their political system, or when they built the Kazungula Bridge that curved around Zimbabwean waters, effectively cutting Zimbabwean cooperation. Nonetheless, again, after the removal of Mugabe, relations have improved, and now Botswana is generally amicable with Zimbabwe. But finally, we get to the one friend that they have generally agreed that is probably the least dramatic and chillest person to hang with, Zambia. These two countries have not only shared a lot of the same history as being the two Rhodesias, and not only do they share a lot of the same ethnic groups like the Tonga, but Zambia has usually played a mediator role to Zimbabwe's conflict times and has participated in multiple cooperation agreements with them. Zambians and Zimbabweans are easily able to cross and work into each other's countries, and it's not uncommon to find many people from these two countries intermarrying and having family on the other side. They love each other. In conclusion, Zimbabwe really is the embodiment of the very name that they have, Zimbabwe, Greater Zimbabwe, the House of Stones, the old medieval kingdom that took over, traded, and grew up to what it is today. I just want to say a huge thank you to Zimbabwe, the country, for having me and letting me visit, and all the very nice people that have been able to help me and accommodate me into making this video. This truly was a great country that I'm so glad that not only me, but also my mom could also experience with me, as well as 18 of my top elite subscribers. This really was the trip of a lifetime, and I'm so glad I got to make this video for you. And with that, our last country lesson is complete. I want to say a huge thank you to all of you that have been with me for 10 years. This truly is the most amazing thing I've ever accomplished. And I love you guys. Class dismissed.
Yo, these serious. First of all, we just want to say thank you to their channel, man, and their entire crew. We watched you guys for quite some time, not the whole 10 years.
Yeah, not the whole
but
10
when
years.
we did jump on and start to realize what type of content you guys was putting out, our supporters as well loved it, right? And another thing, it's not just the information that we're getting from you guys, the people come in our comment section and they reign. They really lay it out, and we got some more reading to do after this. So
And it has just opened our eyes to so much that we were not taught in school.
1000%.
That was the main reason we kept going with geography now, because it's interesting. Like, hold up, why we didn't learn all this?
And how he put everything into play, him and his crew, and how they really teach it. It's like you really can learn something. You can, if you're sitting and you're really enjoying the show, you can learn a lot.
Yes. This is an example of your gift making room for you. He had a passion for learning about the history and all of the things that has to deal with the countries of the world.
Right.
You know, and he put his passion out there, and look at it.
Thrive.
Everybody who is connected around the world because of his passion.
Yeah.
I loved it. We have learned so much about Zimbabwe. Again, like I told y'all earlier, every time we get a Zimbabwe video, it is a long video because there is so much to learn about Zimbabwe.
So much, course, obviously.
Right, this was just the gist of Zimbabwe. There's still so much to learn about Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
So come on, y'all. Description box, send us the links. We're going to try y'all languages. We want to know more about y'all food.
Yep.
Dating life, party life, family life. We want to know about Zimbabwe.
All of it. Facts.
All right, y'all. We hope you guys enjoyed this video with us. Be sure to subscribe. We'll see you soon.
Peace.